Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. And I'm excited. I'm really excited for this. We've been excited for this for some time. Hopefully put a lot of work into this, so a lot of fun we're going to have today. And maybe the first issue that is worth talking about is why we're doing this. You know, we're 13 years in as a company. We're 4.5 years in as a public company, and this is our first investor day. And so why did we decide to do this now? I think, you know, there's probably a couple of reasons. One is that I think Upstart continues to be, in many ways, a misunderstood company in terms of what we're doing, how we do it, where we think we're taking it. And partially that's, you know, on us to be better at describing what we do. I think it's also a bit of a function of the industry that we're in. Lending is this 5,000-year-old industry. And I just think there will always remain a bit of skepticism that any sort of technology, whether it be AI or anything else, can actually fundamentally change the economics and the fundamentals of lending. But I think we're here to share our view on that and tell you something very differently. So anyway, we're excited. Hopefully we're going to make really good use of your time. I appreciate that those in the room here today have dedicated a lot of their day to be here with us, and those online as well. So we'll hopefully make this fun and informative. Really only have, I'm going to try to watch the right side of the stage here, 3 goals for today. First, to help you understand, you know, the size of the opportunity, hopefully to provide what I think is a sort of simple and intuitive framework, because we think the opportunity, again, is probably misunderstood in how big and how awesome the potential is to bring AI to the domain of credit and lending. The second, to understand why we think Upstart will win, why we will be a very large participant in this transformation of this very large industry. We really believe the position we have in the market today, along with the technology that we have and that we're building, the business model that we have chosen to deploy in, and more importantly than all of it, really the team. I think we are the right organization to be a big winner in this very, very important market. And finally, this is an investor conference after all. We would like to convince you to buy our stock or hold our stock, hopefully not sell our stock. And you know, I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to be part of this thing, we really want to have you have a thorough understanding of who we are and what the company's doing. I think when I think about this day and how I hope it plays out in the future, for many of you, I hope this is the day that the light bulb goes off. That you kind of go, oh, I get this. I've been sort of following this thing, but maybe I didn't quite get it. Today, I get it. And that's what I hope we'll do. And whether you buy or you sell or you hold or you upgrade or downgrade, whatever it is you do, I want this to be the day you will remember for many, many years from now. So that's a high bar, I appreciate, but let's get started. So you're going to hear a lot about our technology and our business model. That's kind of the core of what we're doing here today. But I want to start with something different. I want to start with what is in our heart. If I'm going to ask you to buy our stock and put it in a vault and hold it forever, you certainly should know who you're getting into business with, what you're becoming an owner of, and how you can expect us to behave and act as a company in the future. And it really starts with, you know, why we do this. And so I just have a few things I want you to sort of understand fundamentally about Upstart. Number one is we did not start this as an AI company. It wasn't a word we used or a thing we thought about. We simply thought about a problem we were aiming to solve, which was improving access to credit, a system we saw was enormously important and in many ways archaic and dated and underserving those it means to serve. So along the way, of course, AI became the tool of choice in the way that we see a path to a radically better place. And but also at the same time, we were not a 2022, November 2020 bandwagon jumper, if you will. That was not us either, who just sort of attached AI to their name. We started using the term AI and machine learning to describe what we do in 2017. And I think it was because at that time, we had reached a level of sophistication. We felt that it was warranted. It made sense to use these terms. We were also very cautious. We partner with banks and credit unions, and we have a lot of very serious regulators. And so in some sense, you know, it was a leap to start using words like that in such a conservative industry. But we felt even at that time in 2017 that we needed to lead, and we needed to be the ones to advocate for this technology because we saw, even at that relatively early phase, what the potential was. So, but important to say, first of all, you know, we came here to solve a problem, not to start an AI company. You know, we don't use the word Mission-driven. This is a word you see in a lot of websites. These words just don't flow off my tongue really easily. It's not that I don't want to be mission-driven per se, but I kind of feel like if you're using those words in some sense, maybe you aren't. I don't know. It's just it doesn't work for me. But I do like to think about alignment, and this statement here really describes alignment. When I think about Upstart, what I like to think about is in our most incredible, successful version of us, everything we show you today about our vision and where we want to go becomes true times 10. Would that be a fundamentally good thing for the world? And what I can say sort of with purity of heart and clarity in my mind is yes, it would be. It would be a much better world if credit was radically less expensive, radically easier to get. And I don't think you can say that for a lot of companies. I actually think there's a lot of parts of our economy where it's more problematic than that. Think of credit card companies. Is it really better that every single one of us is carrying a large credit card balance month to month and that we're paying off the minimum? And now that's the final state of a credit card business. Or think about the way the food economy is working. Cheaper calories that are empty, and hypertension and diabetes and all the things that's gone on in the American health sector. Or think of social media. Like honestly, some really good things have come from social media, so I'm not really here to bash it, but do we really want to spend more and more time on our phones connecting to people digitally, wearing things on our faces and doing all sorts of, I'm not sure. But I feel when I think about Upstart in terms of alignment, I feel super good about that. The other thing you have to know, and I do use the words here, mission-driven. I think after 13 years, you could also say founder-led, because at this time, they're the same thing. At this point, when you're a founder-led company at this long, it is a mission-driven company, of course. These companies will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. And that is what you really need to know about us. We are not deterred when things get hard or difficult. We don't quit when there's like a shiny new thing that comes along that looks really attractive. We aren't sort of pushed back by the doubters. The doubters don't bother us. There are plenty of them out there. And if anything, it fires us up. So that's the nature of a company like Upstart, is we're not going to quit. We've chosen to do something extremely difficult. There's no recipe for it. There's no precedent for it as far as we're concerned. So we're going to find our way along that road. But we're doing something enormous and important, and we will not stop doing it. So I want to talk about the market size for a moment. And I mean, maybe it goes without saying that lending and credit as an industry is enormous. It's this huge part, this huge sort of substrate of our entire economy. It's a very meaningful part of all of our lives. So it's enormous. Across all the different sort of sectors that you'll see lending in, this isn't all of them, this is just some of the largest. I think our view is the sort of machinery underneath all of this industry in the next 10 years will be replaced and upgraded by AI. All the origination and servicing and collections and all the pieces and parts of the machinery that make this business go. $25 trillion, I think, per year originated. I think that's probably an understatement. We're just trying to put a sort of relative size to it. Enormous. And it will all change, in our view, probably within a decade. And how much of an opportunity is that for the company that powers that provides that machinery? Well, I mean, we're not going to do fancy math here, but we think a reasonable take rate, it's different by credit product, and it depends whether you are sourcing, acquiring the borrower, whether you're originating the product, whether you're servicing, collecting, so it can vary. But we think sort of a 5% take rate on the entire industry is what is sort of available to the platform, in our view, an AI platform that powers it. So we're talking about in excess of $1 trillion in revenue. So we don't have to fine tune that 1.1, 2 billion, who knows? It's an insane amount of money. It's an incredible opportunity for that company or companies that can build the platforms that power it. Just to speak to AI for a moment, I mean, if you've been following this, and of course you can't, unless you have your head in the sand, you cannot not follow it. But the progress of AI really, as it's become sort of in the public sphere, in the public conscience starting in 2022, the progress is just astounding. And every day, every week, there's something that they go, wow, I thought that would be really hard to do. I thought that would take 5 years, 10 years, and boom, it shows up. We're not all the way there yet, but I think if you just sort of follow the technology, it's kind of crazy. And it's pretty obvious from a commercial sense, the way that work gets done is going to be radically different in pretty much every industry. I don't know that we could name an industry. I mean, this is, if you sort of look at what we have here, this is most of the industry of the world. There's not that many that are actually missing here, and they could be added to the slide. And the interesting thing is, what is the common thread? What is AI doing? Everything from education, media and entertainment, defense and warfare, manufacturing, financial services, all these things. What is the common thread? Well, AI is making radically better products at radically lower cost. That's the common thread. It's just an incredible enabler of a transformation of virtually every industry. And what it means and how it plays out, not totally clear. So today, of course, we're going to focus a little more. We're going to talk about financial services, a very specific part of the market. And also, what I would say is a very important part of financial services. Lending and credit is the greatest source of revenue and profits in financial services. So it is an enormous part of an enormous industry. Now, credit and lending, I kind of use both terms because it depends whether you're talking about from the consumer side or the lender side, is a first-tier candidate for AI disruption. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, you can think of it this way. Every time one entity advances credit to another, they are predicting the future. They are predicting what happens next. And this happens millions of times every day. Somebody's advancing money with some assumption or some model or some thought or some belief about how it will come back. And what's at risk? At least $25 trillion every year is at risk because of that. So it's just an almost like picture-perfect thing that AI does, which is better at predictions. And we'll also say that there is almost unlimited amount and types of data and approaches that can be used to make those predictions more accurate. That's sort of, in our view, kind of a given. So you put that together and it says, hey, wow, this is an incredible opportunity. But you do not, as you sit there today watching us, you do not have to trust me. I did what any student of the world does, any college student, and I thought I would say, what does ChatGPT think about this? List the global industries that are likely to be most impacted by AI. This was a single query. I did not do any kind of vibe coding. I literally did this in about 10 seconds, and this is what I got. Number one, healthcare. This is truly incredible when you think about healthcare in the state of the world and the state of where it could be. Diagnostic, drug discovery, personalized medicine. It is not crazy to think that in a decade, the poorest people in the poorest parts of the world are going to have better access to healthcare than the richest people in the richest parts of the world today. That sounds totally crazy, but I think it's entirely within reach, even within a decade. So nothing against healthcare. We don't need to compete. Number two, financial services. And in particular, if you sort of look at, get right down to it, fraud detection, underwriting, customer service. And I think the why is just as important too, because it intuitively lines up with how we think. So I don't know if there's such thing as a world consensus on anything like this. I think ChatGPT is about as close as it gets. I don't think they're hallucinating here. Data rich, regulated, already tech heavy, and AI boosts speed and precision. Speed and precision, remember those two words. But before we talk any more about AI, I want to talk about the problem, because when I say it's this giant opportunity, what problem are we solving? What are we trying to fix? Well, when it comes to loans of any type, I don't care whether it's commercial, consumer, mortgage, student, it doesn't matter. There's really only two functions or features of a loan that matter: the price and the process by which I can get that loan. That's kind of it. It's a simple product, right? There's not all these other weird things you have to think about. There's only two things that matter: the price and the process by which I get it. So let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about the price. Why do loans cost what they do? Why do they cost so much? What is all that interest paying for? So this is a real simple view on it, but I think it might be helpful. First of all, customer acquisition. Now, what does that mean? It could be a bank branch you built 10 years ago that you're amortizing to this day and has staff and all that. That's customer acquisition. It could be digital ads you're running on Google or on Meta or anywhere else. It could be billboards outdoors. It could be advertisements on television. So, but you have to pay for all that. And of course, everyone you advertise to doesn't get a loan. In fact, Even retailers have a problem with advertising because they don't know who converts and what works. It's even worse in credit because a lot of the people you advertise that like your product, you won't be able to approve them. So you can just see how challenging customer acquisition in the world of credit is. Second, people and data. So this is the hard costs of originating credit, right? You have to pull credit scores and fraud scores and this and that. You have to have people reviewing documents and dealing with it. There's bad actors out there that have to be kept away. So there's very hard costs associated with every loan that goes out there one way or another. And finally, and maybe most obviously, credit losses. Turns out everybody does not pay back their loan. And the important thing to grasp here is, guess who pays for the people that don't pay back their loan? The ones that do, right? So if you're paying back a loan, you are by definition subsidizing those who did not pay back their loan. And that's it. That's what it's all about. In the end, there's profit. There's a profit need of the entity that's putting forward the capital, right? There's a sort of return on capital. There's sort of a risk premium, and there's a duration premium and other things. So those all define the expectation of profit of whoever's putting that money out there in the first place. So that's it. That's why they cost so much. There's really nothing else to it. So the question is, I'll move this way. What can AI do to impact the price of a loan? Well, I'm just going to show you our experiment thus far and what it does, because it's pretty incredible to see. Customer acquisition. Conversion improvements reduce CAC. That's how CAC goes down, by converting more people that hear about this into borrowers, in our case. What we've seen since 2019 is 5x growth and a 50% reduction in acquisition cost per loan. Now, that's pretty astounding. Most businesses, as they grow, they struggle to keep their acquisition costs flat because the marginal customer always costs a little bit more. But conversion improvements, improving models, change that dynamic. 50% reduction. How about people and data? Well, automation, of course, takes out a lot of that cost. Not just the people cost, which is obvious, but the data cost. Why? Because you spend an enormous amount of both people and data costs on people that don't convert. And the fewer of those that there are, the less it costs per loan. We have seen a 66% reduction in the people costs associated with originating a loan since 2022, just 3 years ago, 66%. And then maybe the one that's most obvious, we've talked more about this in our past, is credit losses. Better models, as you'll hear a lot about today, are better at avoiding credit losses. And when that happens, everybody else gets a bit lower rate. More people are approved. A smarter model reduces credit losses, all else being equal. And so enormous reduction in the subsidy that has to be carried by the payers. Now, the one thing I want to say is, you see the little yellow text there in the upper right. This is not the final state. This is not all that can be done. This is results to date. And there's no reason, if you've seen us, if you notice our automation numbers, how they've just kind of gone and gone and gone, there's no reason all these numbers can't go and go and go as models get better, as AI gets better, as the compute power gets better. So these are not a final state. I, very importantly, wanted to label this results to date. So let's talk about, oh, I should also say, sorry, I'm sort of leaving this on the bottom. When all these costs go down, there's all these economics that are freed up. You know, do they end up in the lender's hands? Do they end up with the credit investors, or do they end up at the consumer's hands? Well, ultimately, that depends how competitive the market is. In a very competitive market, most of that value flows to the consumer. It creates a far better product, a radically better product, which is what I described to you earlier. So let's talk about the other side. You know, our view generally is the world is somewhat evenly split between people that really value a penny and will do anything to get a slightly lower rate, and people who really want the easiest process, willing to pay a bit more for it. We don't exactly know, but our heuristics always been the world's relatively evenly split between them. So I already talked about the price. What about the experience? So why does getting a loan suck so much? Now, I'm pretty sure everybody here, almost everybody, has gotten a loan of some sort. A car loan, mortgage, student loan, boat loan, motorcycle loan. I don't know. I mean, I'd be surprised as many people there who haven't gotten a loan. If you haven't, bless you, you're very fortunate. But we've all experienced this. Why does getting a loan suck so much? Well, there's a lot of reasons. And this is just some of them. I kind of like this graphic because it looks like they're standing in line, which is sort of a perfect metaphor for getting a loan. See, I'm going to get at the end of the line, and you get a feeling for what it's like in today's world to get a loan. Endless applications. If you've ever applied for a mortgage, student loan, bless you, it's incredible. Documentation requests, right? Driver's license, passports, proof of residency, pay stubs, tax documents, take your pick. Doesn't matter. Could be a business loan, could be a mortgage, doesn't matter. Employer verifications. I mean, who doesn't want somebody calling your boss to tell them that you're getting a loan? Isn't that the most pleasurable part of this? Waiting for a decision. If there's any sort of word synonymous with getting a loan, it would be waiting, because that's central to everyone's experience. And then, of course, that all too convenient in-person closing. Need to come in there, sign the documents. And so anyway, there's other parts, but this is sort of the heart of why getting a loan is never a good thing. Why it's somewhere between, I don't know, going to the dentist and going to the Department of Motor Vehicles for an appointment, somewhere in between those. So the question again is, how does AI impact the experience, the borrowing experience? Well, again, we have our experiment to date, and we'll tell you what we're seeing. 90%, roughly, of upstart loans have none of these. Not one of them. So what you can start to think about is AI is taking us to a world, you're going to hear more about this later today, of always-on credit. Credit is no longer a process, it's an attribute. It's something available to you with zero process, hopefully perfectly priced, but with no process whatsoever for every American. That's a different world. That's what we're building toward, because that's all that really matters in lending and in credit. So how are we going to do this? That sounds like a tall order, kind of persistently underwriting the entire United States, zero process, de minimis fraud, all these things to pull off. How do you do that? And you do that with a foundation model. That means a model that is state-of-the-art, getting better rapidly, and in our case, extremely unique. Now, what is a foundation model? You probably know in the generative AI world about foundation models. OpenAI and Anthropic and Meta all have built foundation models, X.AI, and so there's a lot of companies. I probably should say Google, shouldn't I? I worked there for 8 years. So a lot of companies building these models. Now, interestingly, there's probably 8 going on 10 companies that are credibly building foundation models for generative AI. And the interesting question is, is it going to get commoditized? I mean, there's just so much going on and it's moving so rapidly. But in the end, they all train on mostly the same data, publicly available data, and they're using somewhat similar techniques. And they're differentiated, and they'll fight it out. But it is really a slugfest. In building the foundation model for credit, there's just us. Our data is entirely proprietary. Our model is built and trained entirely on data that is produced from our system itself. So there's no shortcut to building what we're doing. And Paul's going to talk a lot about this foundation model and how it creates the differentiation that we're all here for today. I just want to sort of introduce the basic ideas behind it. Number one, separation. Separation basically means being able to separate good borrowers from bad borrowers and understand the relative risk of an entire population. This is the sweet spot. This is where we started. This is what we're known for. But sometimes people fail to appreciate how impactful this is to what we're building and what we're doing. So separation is the heart of it. Paul's going to talk quite a bit about this as it deserves a lot of attention. Automation. I sort of talked to you about this. When we started way back 2014 or so, 2015, the average borrower had to upload 3, 4, maybe 5 documents, and they had to have a phone call with somebody, and they had to go through these processes that sounded like that picture I had a bit ago. And we started experiments to say, what if our models could do this better? And what we found, by the way, is every document you asked somebody for, you lost 15% of the borrowers, or thereabouts. This wasn't perfect science. We were a little startup. But it was roughly true that every time you added another document that they had to upload and share and go find and put in there, another 15% would disappear. So conversely, the fewer documents, of course, the better the conversion. Automation is very central to creating the experience that makes us tick. Calibration. So separation is not the only thing. You also have to measure and understand the impact that the macroeconomic climate is having on borrowers as a whole. And this is something I wish we started sooner, but we've put in the last 2 or 3 years incredible energy toward very precise and very timely handling of macroeconomic changes. You're going to hear about the impact of those updates and what we're doing. But calibration, fundamentally important to the foundation model. Generalization. Now, you could sort of build a great model for one type of credit, one type of loan. And I think that would be great, but it would not be, in my mind, world-changing, right? It would be sort of like an LLM that just spits out images, right? Very cool. A year ago, that was neat, or 2 years ago. But ultimately, we need something that can handle all forms of credit. And so moving toward generalization is a big part of our future. We're kind of doing it step by step. Our small dollar loan and our personal loan now use the same models. We've kind of taken a lot of the automation and sort of income verification kind of stuff from our personal loan product, moved it over to our HELOC product. But they're still independent models, but a unified future is really a very different place, where the advantages and the scale of a very generalized model can really begin to shine. The last thing I'll say about this is personalization. This is the new vanguard for us. This is what we're just starting on. It's something I'm very excited about. You can think of this as Upstart going from predicting outcomes, which is all we've been doing, trying to predict, to actually shaping the outcomes and turning more of them positive. And the obvious place we start with this is when we do servicing and collections. We're trying to help people get through the process, make good on their credit, make the whole experience good for them. But there's another 100 times more we can do to personalize the experience, to help in small ways, either a business or a consumer make a bit smarter decision along the process. And so just getting started now, we fundamentally believe that generative AI and agent-based technologies are going to be the centerpiece of this. So you should expect to hear a lot from us on this. The last thing I'll say, which is maybe obvious, is, why does this matter so much? Because every person that you can take who might have defaulted, might have made a bad decision, and get them into a better place, it's of course great for them. But guess what? It makes the rest of the system a little bit smarter and a little bit better for everybody else. And that's the beauty of this sort of feedback loop that we have. I'm doing okay on time, but I'm taking more than I thought I would. But we're okay. 2025 priorities. I first laid these out in February when we had our earnings call, and I kind of gave an update just last week at our earnings. But I want to just share with you, I think it's important for us where we are to tell you what is the most important things we're doing and working on, and how are we doing against those. So these are what I said. 10x our advantage in AI. AI is the engine that makes us work, and it is sort of the differentiation. And I believe we are miles ahead of anybody in this regard. We do not believe there are others trying to build a foundation model for credit. But for us, it comes down to both sort of the process and the substance getting better. Process-wise, we've never shipped models faster and more efficiently. And substance-wise, we just continue to land new innovations. We talked about embeddings just last week. Paul's going to talk more about that. But this is what it means. It's how quickly you're innovating, and are you nailing the right things, and does the train keep rolling? And I feel very confident that this is happening this year. Second, prepare our funding supply for rapid growth. We've gone through what I think is a wholesale remake of our funding supply in the last 3 years. Sanjay's going to talk a lot about this, but we fundamentally went from sort of an at-will marketplace, lots of funding that can come and go, to more of a supply chain with locked-in partners that have alignment, that have business models that work really well with ours. And this is a very big change, and we're going to continue to build that toward our future with many products and lots of these really important partners, particularly in private credit. GAAP profits, returning to profitability in the second half. This is obviously fundamental to us. We were profitable as a private company. We were profitable for quite a few quarters when we first came public. That environment was very challenging for us, so it's been urgent for us to get back to being a profitable company. I think we're on the path, and I also think we're excited to kind of demonstrate the leverage in our business as the core product is regrowing very, very quickly, and then these newer products are also growing. We're a low fixed cost business that has a ton of leverage in it. And finally, I've talked a lot about this recently inside the company. We hear about this a lot. Giant leaps toward best rates and best process for all. A few months ago, toward the beginning of this year, I said to every general manager, product general manager on our team that by the end of 2025, I would like you to see whether you can have the best rates for every borrower segment that you serve. By best rates, I would say the highest win rate among competition for the borrower segments that you serve. That's been the challenge. And I'm very happy to report, and I want to share with you some data now. In our core product, the personal loan, we've achieved that. So what you see here is a lot of third-party data mixed together in some internal analysis to see how we do versus the next best competitor in 3 major segments. Super prime over here, sort of mid-prime here, and non-prime there. And what you see is by win rate, we today are already the best. And there's a few things that are important to say about this. First of all, it's a snapshot in time. It's not guaranteed to last. We need to strengthen it. We need to reinforce it. We need to get better at it. So this is not a permanent state of the world. This is what it looked like roughly in the last month, just to give you a sense of what this is. I'll also say that these 3 peers that are in yellow, each are different companies. And I think that's a really important thing to realize. We're playing a very different game than anybody else out there in the field. So I also want to say, I think it's easy to be skeptical or to say, wow, Upstart is just willy-nilly lowering its rates. It's taken on more risk. It's maybe just giving up its profits, doing unprofitable loans. None of those things are true. What you're going to learn today, and I'm about to turn it to Paul, is that this is actually the completely predictable and logical endgame when you have superior AI and very strong business execution. This is the game we're playing. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I want to introduce Paul Gu, who's my co-founder and Upstart's Chief Technology Officer.